Thank you. In December of last year, the very last American denim manufacturing plant closed after 125 years of operation. This was the mill that provided the denim for some of the very first pairs of jeans made in the US, the very first pairs of jeans made anywhere. It was opened in 1905 and named after the white oaks that surrounded the plant. For many years, this plant was an icon. It provided all of the denim for the high-end companies in the US. But then demands changed. What was once advanced technology is now outdated. It's cheaper to produce materials overseas. You probably didn't notice that this happened. The mill was in Greensboro, North Carolina, and not anywhere near us. Clothing companies still have access to denim. It is just no longer made in America. But yet, with the closing of the White Oak Denim Mill, a 1 million square foot factory, our web of connections has shifted and given us a reason to consider where our clothing comes from and to consider how many more threads we have left unnoticed in our web of existence. A way to more deeply understand the interconnectedness of our world community is to consider connections and influence that we might not have necessarily thought of before. I think fashion is something that's always on people's minds, whether or not we like to admit it. We think about what the clothes we wear say about us and how we feel when we wear them. We think about what our clothing says about us and how much it costs and whether or not it's appropriate for the situation. But we don't always think about where they come from and how many beings have taken part in its creation. If you stop and think about that, the answer can be quite surprising. Once we become aware of our interconnectivity, we can cultivate it and appreciate it and help it grow and deepen and truly appreciate it for what it is. This does not just include connections to other humans, but all kinds of connections. Connections to the fields around us, including the cows, connections to the earth, to other countries, to everything. In the sewing community, there is this idea that the things that we make with our own hands are somehow better than the things that we can buy from the store. There's this idea that we are being more sustainable and we are treating ourselves fairly and that it's created by a person and not a machine. At times, I admit I share this opinion. But the thing is, everything we wear is handmade. Even with all of the technological advances that this world has seen, garment manufacturing is still a human process. Even still, most of our clothes are still made with fibers that are part of living beings, be that plant or animal. All of the clothes we wear have been created by many somebodies. Dozens of beings put time and energy into becoming the clothes we wear. It's easy to forget that when we go to the store and see 20 identical garments on a rack. We think that they're just made from some mechanical process involving robots. But the reality is that there's a living being behind everything. For example, the jeans start as a cotton plant in a field that needs light and water to survive and grow stronger and bigger when we give it the proper attention. Then the cotton is harvested by a person, and it is spun by somebody else with a machine, yes, but there is a person operating that machine. We do not yet have a way to spin thread without somebody there. Then it's woven and stitched and assembled and pressed by many different people. Then comes to a warehouse, then a store, then finally to us. That list Might not even stop there. We donate our old clothes to Goodwill, or we recycle them. Each step is another connection, another thread in that interdependent web. People and animals are living their lives to give us what we need and what we want. The environment is being harmed by our clothing buying habits. I think of how many lives are being impacted by me and the ways my life has had influence over their lives. It is time to be more mindful about the depth of this interdependent web of all existence that we talk about so frequently. It's a weird web, and there are more threads to it than we know. And it is truly interdependent. It's like the butterfly effect. Something small happens thousands of miles away from us, and yet it permanently changes our lives in some small way. Or something big and far away from us changes the world in a way we don't even notice. 1 million square foot denim plant closes, and yet we can still buy our jeans. When I think of interconnectedness, I think of the connections I have with things I own, the connections that are frequently forgotten, and we act as if they don't have importance. The thing about interconnectedness is that it's happening whether or not we acknowledge it. Once we see how everything is joined together, it becomes easier for us to understand our impact on the world. When we start to be more mindful of all of the parts of the web, we can love deeper and hurt less and give more of ourselves to the world. Every day that we get dressed, we are carrying around the connections we have with others, with people, with plants, and with animals, with all living beings. Each item shows all of the different places and things in the world that are impacted by us and that impact us. Imperfect or perfect, everything we wear is done with somebody's hands. Everything is created by other living things in the field and in the factories. It's very easy to forget this, but it's also easy to remind ourselves of this when it's right there on our person and in our connections with others. I used to play a game with a friend of mine where we would stand there and go from head to toe and say where all of our clothing was from. For instance, I got these shoes at the Goodwill in Beaverton. I got this jacket in Portland. Backpack I got in London, so on and so forth. Maybe it doesn't sound like it, but it was a great mindfulness practice that was also pretty fun. And now I like to go even deeper than that. No, I don't expect everyone to go out and research where all of your clothes come from. If you do it, that's great, but it's quite a process. But it can be a more abstract process. You can look at the tags and see the country of origin and research what the factory conditions look like in that country. Excuse me. You can look at the fiber content and learn more about how it was made. You can start to get to know how many connections and how much of our interdependent web is carried around with us each and every day by the clothes we wear. When we start to be more mindful of all the relationships that come with everyday items, we can start to create a better, more aware world. We can start to get to know people and communities better. We can honor our promise to the planet. Clothes are important, connections are important. We live in an interdependent web, and fashion is an undeniable part of that web. And I think that's pretty awesome. Okay, please join me in our final hymn, Let It Be a Dance, number 311.